Welcome back to Devils, Saints, and Scoundrels. I'm Suzanne Ross, and we are looking a little deeper now at Dostoevsky's idea of interdividuality and how he represents that artistically in his work, because he is, first and foremost, a novelist. So his challenge was to find a way to represent artistically the insights that he was coming to about human nature. And for Dostoevsky, the idea of a self, an autonomous, independent self that exists as sort of a hard shell covering our deepest secrets, desires, and inner being, is an illusion, because there is no such thing as an independent creature. We exist in relationship. So the question is how to represent that in dialogue. For him, this self appears to be autonomous because we're relating to each other at any given moment in time as discrete, complete people. But that moment when we're interacting with each other is concealing the reality of how we came to be who we are in that moment. Because how we came to be involves the whole series of our life, our experience, our upbringing, the culture we were reared in, all of the influences in our lives that makes us who we are. If you're a parent or ever have come in contact with a little child, you know that they do not come into this world as completely, fully formed human beings. They become who they will be in a process of growth and dependency on those around them. So how to represent this truth about the self in dialogue. So here's how Dostoevsky went about it. Each of his characters represents an idea, a lived idea. So each character in the brothers Karamazov, particularly the three brothers, Dmitri, Ivan, and Alyosha, are trying to figure out what an idea means for their lives, how it will be embodied in their lives. Because Dostoevsky takes seriously the life of an idea, that it actually becomes lived out. For Christians, you can think of the incarnation of the Word made flesh. This is an idea that really governs Dostoevsky's thinking, that oftentimes we're consciously trying to live out an idea, and sometimes we're unconsciously living out an idea, and the task is to bring into consciousness exactly what it is we're doing. But regardless, we're all wrestling with ideas. I like to think of all those conversations I had in college late at night with my friends over, some minor point of philosophy or politics, and you could go forever talking about these things, but that's kind of what Dostoevsky's characters are doing. And so, but because Dostoevsky is very aware that those ideas don't exist independently and autonomously in a self, they exist and come alive in interactions. They are not static, these ideas, or unchanging. They're dynamic. And not only don't they exist in me, they don't exist in you, they actually exist in the space between us, in our engaging with one another. And for Dostoevsky artistically, this is what dialogue represents. His characters, when they're in dialogue with one another, are actually working and developing their being, their identity, their consciousness is actually being created in the moment of interaction, which is represented by the dialogue. Now, this insight into Dostoevsky's artistic techniques was developed by literary critic Mikhail Bakhtin. And so I'm going to offer you two quotes from Bakhtin that I think really summarize this very well. Bakhtin traces Dostoevsky's idea about this development of consciousness back to Socrates, who believed that truth was knowable, as does Dostoevsky, but he believes it's knowable in that space between people. So Bakhtin puts it this way, speaking of Socrates' idea of truth. Truth is not born, nor is it to be found inside the head of an individual person. It is born between people, collectively searching for the truth in the process of their dialogic interaction. Now, Bakhtin takes that quote and he actually uses that word dialogic to describe Dostoevsky's techniques. Okay, and so he says for Dostoevsky, in dialogue, a person becomes for the first time that which he is. Two voices is the minimum for life, the minimum for existence. So for Dostoevsky, I think Bakhtin is accurate in saying that no one can exist in isolation. You come into being in relationship, you continue to come into consciousness in relationship, and your life is a dynamic creation that's going on all the time. So I think when we look to Descartes' saying, "I think, therefore I am," we can see that that is a representation of a false and illusory sense of self. And I think that in light of the brothers Karamazov and Dostoevsky's work, we might say that rather than "I think, therefore I am," we could say "I become," or "I become conscious in my relationships with others." So I hope that we've got some of the main ideas out about Dostoevsky's dialogic way of expressing truth and consciousness and the self-becoming. And in the next session, we're going to get into the beginning of the novel and some of the ways that the characters are relating to one another in a broken way. Thank you.